let's look at some exciting new HEMA jackets. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatore. So in HEMA, obviously most of the viewers who are watching this who do HEMA know this, but for those of you who don't, we wear padded jackets. Not because we're insane, but because we're getting hit by swords, and padded jackets are what primarily protect us, not just incidentally from sword hits, but also the danger of if a blade breaks or anything like that. And really, you know, in the early days, we put together protection of bits and pieces, but what has turned out to be the best overall defense, even if you add bits and pieces to it, is a jacket of some kind. Particularly we need it for protection in areas like the armpits, around the neck and all of this kind of thing. Because even if we protect the bones and the joints and the bits of our body which generally get injured when you get hit, you don't want even blunt points of weapons or any other bits of weapons, cross guards or anything else, slipping into gaps. Now, there are many companies making jackets out there in a wide price range, and there are companies making jackets off the shelf and indeed tailored, and some of those companies will offer both. And you know, the needs of what you need from a jacket varies depending on what weapons you're using, but by far, I would say in the UK and in Europe, as far as I'm aware, the most popular HEMA weapons and fencing styles at the moment are longsword first by a very large margin, and then probably rapier and sabre roughly equal. So really these are the weapons that we're primarily looking at protecting ourselves from. Now, as I said, there are other companies making jackets, but recently, or in the last few months, maybe the last year, the Red Dragon brand of the Night Shop, or the HEMA Shop, it's the same company, have been developing their own jackets, and they decided, I think sensibly, to go with two jackets. Now, for a long time I've been myself using jackets for both longsword and for sabre, and I'm increasingly finding that what I need for a jacket for sabre or rapier or small sword is different to what I would need for longsword. So let's have a look at these two jackets they've been developing. So first up we have the heavy jacket, and this is rather similar in sort of size and weight to a lot of the jackets currently on the market. This is the one designed primarily for longsword and, generally speaking, the heavier weapons that are used in HEMA, or the harder hitting weapons that are used in HEMA. First impressions are, it's really well made. I love the degree of stiff padding that it's got on the forearm. It's got a nice shape, it's comfortable. Interesting to note as well that because the Night Shop are aiming at the should we say entry price range, I believe that the recommended retail price on these is going to be about £150, around about there. So they're relatively affordable as jackets go. There are many more expensive jackets than that, but they don't, to me anyway, they don't look like they're made on a budget at all. They are you know, decent quality. They're as good as the other jackets that I have worn and tried and currently own. The padding is not duvet-like. So what I've found in HEMA jackets is there's a spectrum between duvet-like padding, big squidgy, or quite compressed, flat, stiff padding. This is at the compressed, stiff end of the scale, which is good in terms of heat distribution. I find that they are cooler jackets to wear than the big padded ones. It's got the typical overlapping breast, which has become pretty standard in HEMA. Obviously this means that you've got two layers of protection on the front where you're most likely to be hit most of the time. The zip is good quality. Some jackets from some manufacturers famously had weak zips in the early days, and HEMA jacket zips take quite a battering, as well as occasionally getting hit. They just are under quite a lot of stress and strain. This is a thick, it's a plastic zip with a metal zipper, with a steel zipper, with a little toggle there, right there. And one thing I should say as well as you're looking at this, so we'll talk about the colour in a minute. This red section, I believe this is a prototype, on the final one this is going to be black. Okay, so if you don't like the fact that I've got a big red V underneath my face, don't worry about that, okay, because I don't think that'll be on the final one. Right, so we've got double layered, and then there's an overlapping flap, so that's all good. zip up to there, and then there's a Velcro bit at the top to close that. Now you will be noticing that the front of my throat is open. Why is that? Well, so one of the issues with some jackets is that they have a collar which comes tight around the throat, and then they have the mask bib would come over that, like this. Now, one of the dangers has always been blades coming under here. There are various solutions to that. One is to wear a gorget, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But the other one is to have the tight collar with a folded over lip on it as a blade catcher, things like this. So there's various options. But what the Night Shop, what the Red Dragon brand has been experimenting with is having a flap that comes over. They're not the first people to do this. They're not, I believe the first person to suggest this, at least online, was David Rawlings years ago. And gradually some manufacturers have been starting to play with this idea, and this is now Red Dragon's turn. So the idea is you put the mask on, and then that flap comes over the edge of the bib and velcros around the side. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, it can sometimes be tricky to get that velcro on, but you do kind of get used to it. And what this achieves is a flush front whereby nothing is going to be able to even get to the underneath of the bib. Now, one thing I would say is to maintain mobility, and we do have fairly decent mobility, turning left and right, and if you're doing rapier or sabre, for example, that's quite important, but equally even with longsword, to maintain that, these are open at the side. Now, there is a possibility that something could go in there, but first of all you encounter the bib of the mask, because remember the bib of the mask is still inside here. But what I would say is, to prevent any risks of anything coming behind the bib of the mask, if you want to be really safe and really sure, then I would recommend wearing a gorget anyway, okay? But this is the first jacket that the HEMA Shop have made, the Night Shop have made, that uses this system. So, you know, it's an ongoing experiment. The design might be tweaked, the proportions might be tweaked, all this kind of stuff. There may be a gusset added. So it's a sort of work in progress, as it were, but I think it's a great idea to cover the bottom of the bib of the mask like that, and it's certainly it's one way of making the neck safer. I should also add, inside here is a hard, well not hard, but a thick foam element, so that also provides a lot more padding and protection to the front of the throat from direct strikes. In terms of the rest of the jacket, it's got really good mobility. It's got these, again, this has become quite typical in HEMA, quite big upper arms. This is actually a design used on medieval doublets, and it works well. It seems to have a fair amount of thickness at the armpit. Some jackets, in my view, are too thin at the armpit, but this feels at the better end of the spectrum. Very stiff and thick padding at the front. Thin at the back, good, that means it keeps it cool, you don't need lots of padding at the back, and it's got this strap at the back so you can draw it in and make it a bit more fitted to you. And this is size extra large. I'm 6'1" and about 13 stone, and this fits me pretty well. Good arm length, good mobility, good stiff padding. I like it, it's really good. My only questions about it is how this, and I haven't used this in sparring, how this would work for what I personally do. Now, as I've mentioned, I have increasingly found that longsword jackets, because of their nature of having to be large and heavy and thick to protect from longswords, are probably overkill for a lot of what I now do. A lot of what I now do being sabre, sometimes rapier, sometimes small sword. I do a little bit of sword and buckler, and again, I don't feel like I need the same degree of jacket with as I do for longsword. And that's where the lighter jacket comes in. Now, the HEMA Shop's lighter jacket, Red Dragon light jacket, is essentially a more traditional design. So it's got less padding on it, and it has the traditional style of collar. The zip, as far as I can see, is exactly the same as the other one and seems to be decent quality. So let's zip it up. One thing I would say is it's a little bit, so I've drawn, it's got the same drawstring or strap at the belt at the back. I've drawn it in as far as it will go, and it's a little bit big for me, so clearly I need to eat more pie. I would personally prefer it to be a little bit more fitted, but this, you've got to remember, with an off-the-shelf jacket, You're getting it cheaper because it's made in one standard size, and they have got that size adjustment on there. So if you want a tailored jacket, then you go and get a tailored jacket. And a one size jacket, one size fits all, or at least it comes in different sizes, so small, medium, large, extra large. If you're fitting into one of those categories, you're dealing with a large range of body shapes. So that being the case, I think they've done a good job with this. Again, the mobility is good. This is a light, cool jacket. It feels like, yeah, it just feels like wearing a light jacket. It doesn't feel bulky or heavy or anything else. It has, as mentioned before, a blade catcher under there, which helps prevent anything sliding up here coming under the mask. So this is the more traditional design. Coming under the mask, if it does come under the bib, it will get caught on that, hopefully, on that blade catcher. Another detail I'd add, obviously you could wear a separate gorget underneath of this, but another thing I'd add is when you've got a separate blade catcher like that, you can actually insert a little plate under there as well to give extra direct protection to the windpipe if you want to. I like the way that it cuts diagonally across the body. It's a quilted design, and we've got a bit of stretchiness on the inside of the sleeves. The inside of the sleeves are thinner than the outside of the sleeve, so it's very much done in such a way that they've protected the side that's going to get hit the most. It does mean you've got a bit less protection on the inside, but it's a cool light jacket, so this is really probably primarily aimed at people doing rapier and perhaps sabre. So there we go, there's a brief quick look, and again these are prototypes, but they're soon going to be for sale, and as mentioned, the final version of this won't have quite as much red on it. It will not have the red throat, I don't think. And they're going to come in at around, I think, 140, 150 pounds in the UK, and they'll be available through the HEMA Shop. Send them a message if you want to find out more details. I'll put a link obviously to their shop below. But there you go, and I think it is the right direction to go in to have a heavy jacket and a light jacket, because you don't need longsword level of protection for doing sabre or rapier in general, but you do still need a jacket. Cheers folks!
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.